next presentation bears the title, Failures of the Fourth Wave, Why Americans Should Not Support Modern Feminism. Please welcome Jonathan LaFrance.
Equality, a word that sparked passionate people to flock to the streets of cities all across America, a word that embodied the entire summer of 2020. The questions are, what is it? How do we find it? And are there multiple kinds of this equality? Not only this, but one question lingers. If so many people are searching for equality, why is there seemingly so little of it in this world? As we look for the answer in certain social media movements, such as the Me Too movement, we see that the answers are often blurred due to the fact that they are driven by emotion and passion, and many of them have their own stories behind it. It is also important to evaluate the Believe All Women's movement in conjunction with the Me Too movement on these same questions, for both of them have the same core claim. How do we achieve equality specifically for women? And this is congruent with many other modern feminist movements and even older feminist movements. But the issue with both the Believe All Women's movement and the Me Too movement is this. They promote equal outcome. An equal outcome can only bolster one group as it oppresses another group in order to achieve equality. And this is why I say we need to get rid of both these groups. And opposed to that, we need to have a true cry for equal opportunity. For equal opportunity clearly states that as it bolsters one group, it doesn't have to oppress the other group. And that way, everyone is equal without having the side effects of equal outcome. Stacey Abrams, a former congresswoman, clearly states, I believe women. I believe victims of violence need to be heard, and their stories need to feel comforted when they are telling them. While this is great, and this is actually the core belief of the Believe All Women's movement, it is necessary that we do not believe women purely off their gender. And that is the issue with this statement, and also the issue with the Believe All Women's movement. Let's look back to 2010. There was a man by the name of Sean Oakman. He was going to be the first pick in the NFL draft. But 3 days before he was able to achieve this feat, he was accused of sexual assault by a woman. And even though he claimed that he was innocent and he did not commit a single one of the actions that was alleged against him, he had to watch as each of the 32 NFL teams for a 3-day span picked everyone else besides him. This crushed him. And we would later find out that he was innocent and that he did not commit a single action that he was accused of. This cannot be the case. We cannot have more people who are falsely accused. And if Sean Oakman were to be around, especially when the Believe All Women's movement was in the legal system, this may not have played out in the same way. We may see that Sean Oakman would be doing times for actions he simply did not commit. And this would be a true travesty, especially in the eyes of Alan Dershowitz, who simply states, it is worse for one man to be falsely imprisoned than to let over 100 men go free. And this cannot ring truer than for Sean Oakman. Now, many people will say that since the Believe All Women's movement is only a social media movement, it has no legal basis and can't affect the law. But there's actually 2 ways that it can seep into the law. The first being that the First Amendment gives us the right to petition. And with enough votes and enough momentum behind this petition, people would be able to take it to Congress. And Congress, if voting in favor of it, would enact it into the law, even if it did go against other amendments or pre-existing laws. Also, the second way it'd be able to be enacted into the law is through the penal code, which is influenced by lawyers and judges of their respective area. And although it's different between each state, if enough states were to adopt this, we could see it become a federal law. But not only this, the reason why it's so detrimental that if it were to be enacted into the law is due to the 4th and the 15th Amendment. which have a due process clause that clearly state no man's right of life and liberty shall be revoked without proper due process of the law. Now, the Believe All Women's movement clearly goes against this due process. But not only this, in these same amendments, there is a clause that states that there must be a presumption of innocence. And innately, the Believe All Women's movement goes against this presumption of innocence and flips it on its head, because it would actually make the accused presumed guilty, and they'd have to prove their innocence. And that is not how the legal system works in America. But not only this, there are two other reasons why this is not a great movement. The other being that this allows for a floodgate of false allegations to happen. In our current state, there's not any substantial effects that deter people from making false allegations, other than slander charges and things of that nature. And another thing is, that since this only would involve women, it is prejudice against other groups as well. And as we see that gender becomes more and more of a subject in America, this would have to change. So not only is this movement unconstitutional, unethical, it is also prejudice. But now let's look at the Believe All Women, at the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement has done great things in the past, and they deserve praise for that. They brought awareness to the workplace misconduct that is going on in America. But when they switched over from the workplace to the courtroom is where we see a fatal flaw. They've forgotten the core values of the early feminist movement. These core values clearly stated that women were to be equal to men without oppressing men. But clearly, we see that this is not the case anymore. For the Believe All Women's movement would oppress men in a courtroom while bolstering women. And so clearly, both the Believe All Women's movement and the Me Too movement need to be dissolved. And opposed to that, we need to have a stronger cry for equal opportunity. For equal opportunity in this case would provide that women would feel comfort in telling their stories and would feel that they would receive the right justice in a courtroom. And this is what Stacey Abrams wanted. While also at the same time, it would give the men the right to have due process, to have their assumption of innocence, and everyone would be able to receive equality. So I urge you, as I leave here today, fight for equality. Do not fight for the Me Too movement and the Believe All Women's movement. For in fighting for equality, you will not only be fighting for women in the courtroom and for women to deal with these heinous crimes against them, but you will also deal with setting the stone for other movements, such as the Black Lives Matter movement and other social injustice movements. Thank you.